Well, let's look at three murder cases that are leading the headlines this week, including the unsolved murder of Rachel Morin, a mother of 5 who was murdered on a local hiking trail. Then we're going to talk about a mentally disturbed mother who murdered a foster parent friend who just happened to be taking care of her children. And then to round things out, we're going to look into a mother that cops say conspired with her convict son to kill her daughter's ex-husband. We're going to be going from bizarre to gruesome as we delve into the dark details, folks. So buckle up. Well, thanks for joining us here on Profiling Evil as we talk about these cases. I hope you'll take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button as we get started, and make sure you're ringing the bell so that you get all of our notifications on videos just like this one. And if you will, give us the thumbs up and make sure you're telling your friends about us. You know, it's been 6 months since mother of 5, Rachel Morin, went out for a walk along the Ma and Pa Trail in Bel Air, Maryland. In that time frame, detectives have conducted more than 100 interviews. They followed up on more than 1,000 tips, but they still haven't solved the case. Her family's frustrated, but they hope someone, including the suspect's family members, might get the courage to step up and call police. Let's look at this little news clip from the local media.
You are an intensely private person.
Yes.
Living the most public and most painfully public life.
Yeah.
In a move completely out of her comfort zone, Patty Morin, an introvert, church administrator, mother, and grandmother, steps forward. Forward for Rachel and forward for family.
Was she a teenager there?
She was 18.
We're so connected that it physically hurts us that she's not here.
It's like, I know that it's a fact, but I can't accept it yet.
Moving right along.
Whether it is a silly video singing alongside her brother in her car, or pictures from a childhood photo album,
Oh, you would have loved her.
the image of Rachel Morin is different than the one that has mesmerized the public since early August. Patty Morin, who homeschooled her 6 children, says Rachel was sensitive, insecure, and even stuttered terribly until just a few years ago.
But it also gave her compassion towards other people, and because she was made fun of a lot as a child.
Later in life, while some would see Rachel as fit and glamorous, the mother of 5 lived modestly and cleaned homes and businesses to earn a living. Patty worried about her.
So she didn't see herself as being any kind of a target or at risk for anything. And so she just lived her life as Rachel. Like, she just loved people and was outgoing. And so that made me scared for her. And I would tell her all the time, Rachel, don't walk the trail by yourself.
It was August 6th, just hours after she had been reported missing, that Rachel's body was found on the Ma and Pa Trail in Bel Air, where she exercised almost daily.
I've seen my daughter since they found her, but seeing her and accepting it are like 2 different things.
Well, police recovered DNA at that gruesome murder site where she was recovered, and that DNA was put in the CODIS system. They found a match in Los Angeles to a man that's seen in this video as he's leaving the crime scene of another assault. They have his DNA, but they don't have his name. They say this case isn't cold, and the DNA match they now have is for a suspect who assaulted a victim in the east coast of the United States and on the west coast of the United States, 4,500 miles apart. But that guy is firmly in the crosshairs of police. They followed leads to 7 different states, and they've collaborated with 10 federal, state, and local agencies on the case. Now, though, they're releasing this image of a composite drawing of Rachel's killer. They're confident that the drawing's going to cause somebody out there to say, hey, that looks like so-and-so. The reward on the case has risen to $35,000, and you can send any of your tips, hopefully only those that really have relevance, to rmtips@harfordsheriff.org. You know, I appeared on Court TV to talk about this case and the new sketch that's come out, and frankly, to talk about why I think this has been such a difficult case to solve.
Folks, it has been 6 months since the brutal murder of a Maryland mother of 5. Investigators zeroed in on an unknown suspect who also was involved in a violent home invasion robbery in Los Angeles before Morin's murder. This is the man police say is responsible for both crimes. Up next, see a new sketch of the suspect as investigators are hoping to track him down. It has been 6 months since mother of 5, Rachel Morin, was found brutally murdered on a Maryland hiking trail. The man investigators say killed Morin hasn't been found or even identified yet. Well, today, the Harford County Sheriff's Office released 2 sketches of the suspect that they're trying to track down. It's the man seen on the surveillance video in Los Angeles after a home invasion. The LAPD confirmed DNA from the Morin murder scene matched the suspect in a residential burglary and assault on March 26, 2023. All right, still with us to discuss, retired police commander, host of Profiling Evil, Mike King, former senior homicide prosecutor, Bernardo Villalona. Mike, I'm going to start with you. I can tell you what, after 6 months, when this first came up 6 months ago, I thought it wouldn't take very long. I mean, we had video of the guy coming out of an apartment. They were able to connect him to another crime. But 6 months later, we don't have anyone. Are you surprised?
I am surprised, given the fact that they have this CODIS information, which would suggest that his DNA is in the database and probably could have been collected in some county jail or somewhere else, which should have brought it all together and made this thing full circle. But, you know, I'm not necessarily surprised, Michael, that it hasn't been solved yet, because, you know, you think back 30, 40 years ago, we used to solve these cases because people were less mobile then than they are today. Just out of curiosity on this case, I mapped out this location in South LA where this, the video that's playing where that assault occurred. And then I marked out on this Ma and Pa trail where this happened on the East Coast, you know, 4.5 hours away by airplane. And the only thing I can see similar right now is some military bases, which makes you start thinking, what has law enforcement done to start looking at reasons why a predator might be in one location of the country and then in another? And the beauty of how mobile offenders can be today, they can actually commit crimes and that evening be across country and eating dinner with their family. These are difficult cases, especially if it's an experienced serial predator that's involved. I'd love to know what the victim in that California case looks like and see if there's similarities there. And I'm sure law enforcement's looking at all those kinds of things.
Yeah, Bernardo, Mike makes an excellent point. The idea that something happened in LA is connected to something happening in Bel Air, Maryland, all the way across the country. We had thought in the initial video that we saw of him leaving the apartment that there might be some military background based on his haircut. And again, he's able to sort of slip in and out, move. Apparently, according to some new information, he was in the Bel Air area for a while. So there must be some place there where he's domiciled or is staying. Clearly, what are your thoughts about this one?
So the good thing when it comes to a homicide prosecution, that there is no statute of limitations as to prosecuting someone for homicide, for murder, or anything related to murder. So that's the one good thing in terms of time. But what concerns me is the time that has passed by, because you have a person of interest, you have a suspect, you have him identified in the sense that you have a sketch and you have his DNA. So the question is, where is he? And I have to agree, the thing is that times have changed. We're so accessible to trains, to planes, to buses. Hey, he can be out of the country for all we know. There's just so much access out there for people to get away. The question, and I hope what's not happening now, is that we have another homicide that's taking place in the meantime while we're trying to find this guy.
Mike King, the reality is, though, the way this guy seems to be operating, it's very likely, and you mentioned this idea that maybe he's a serial sort of offender. You get the sense that that might be the case here.
Yeah, you think about serial predation and the fact of the victim selection process. That's why I think it's so important to know what maybe that other victim looked like. But you got to take into account the fact also that as these predators move around, they get better at what they're doing. They also can start to become disorganized over time. But when you look at things like what happened in Maryland, it makes you want to kind of lean toward maybe the idea this was more opportunistic in nature than targeted, unless she runs that park every day at the exact same time. And so I think there are a lot of questions that are left unanswered that hopefully are being answered through the investigation that are going to continue to narrow that funnel of possible suspects down to who's most probable for it. And I suspect law enforcement might have an idea. They're just having a hard time putting the case together.
Yeah, and we also know that they only give out a certain amount of information. They may certainly know more than they're giving out at this point.
Well, the case of Rachel Morin is one that you're going to want to keep watching. And I believe police are going to actually make an arrest soon on this one. It's possible this guy's linked to something like the military. And I come up with that because I actually mapped out where the 2 assaults have occurred, and I plotted out where the military installations are. And they're within just a couple miles in both locations. Now, that's just a guess, and I think these are the kind of things that the police department is looking into. But it's likely that this guy is hiding in plain sight. So if you know something about this case, you truly believe you know something, go ahead and make sure you send some contact information and your ideas into police. Well, hey folks, I hope you're enjoying our content on Profiling Evil, and I hope you'll check out our website and spend some time looking into our story maps. Story maps are a great place to gain a much better understanding of some of the cases that we've been following. And here's a little teaser. As part of our Fundamentalist Friday episodes, I'm working on an FLDS story map about the history of the community and how convicted child abuser Warren Jeffs destroyed it. I'm wondering, should I be thanking him? But now let's get back to our stories tonight. Let's look now at the case of Annette Harvey from Tennessee. She was just convicted of killing her friend that was the foster parent to her children. She went in and she stabbed her 15 times. Now, it only took a jury 3 hours to come back with the guilty verdict, even though the defense and prosecution argued for 5 days over the trial. Because that's really the question. Was she mentally able to make the choice to premeditate and commit the murder of Robin Leonard? That's who she killed, a 50-year-old woman who worked as a psychology professor at East Tennessee State University. Now, they were friends. That's the saddest reality of this. The victim and the killer were friends. But the victim was caring for the killer's children because she was having some episodes that her family was concerned about. And frankly, that's what makes it even worse. The victim's family was pleading with their mother not to get involved with Harvey, a woman they felt was capable of murder. Well, I was asked on Court TV about whether or not I believed Harvey could have committed the murder in a premeditated way. I offered these comments, and I hope you'll listen in.
All right, let's turn now to Annette Harvey. Bernardo, she was found guilty today. The jury quickly rejecting this idea that she'd had these paranoid delusions. Your reaction to the verdict?
I'm not surprised as to the verdict of finding her guilty, because you have to think in this case, it wasn't an issue as to whether she actually killed this person. The issue was, what was her mental state? What did she suffer from some kind of mental illness to the point where she wasn't able to formulate the mental state necessary for the crime? And as you can see, with a verdict so quickly, in less than 3 hours, they quickly dismissed that. And when it comes with premeditation, you have to think that premeditation can be accomplished in a matter of seconds. You don't need hours, you don't need days to actually premeditate a murder. So I think the jury was quick in seeing that, and also taking into account that she testified in this case. So being that she testified, they took her credibility in mind, and when they took her credibility in mind, which completely changes the deliberation process, they quickly dismissed her claim.
Yeah, and to those 2 points, Mike King, and the rebuttal argument by the state, they mentioned the idea that it only takes the time it took to take out her knife and open it is enough there to form the intent to kill. So I think that was effective. But they also used her time on the stand against her, saying she never really wanted to talk about the real relationship. This person was her friend from a very young age. Other people described them as very good friends, but she wouldn't say that on the stand, and she showed no remorse. I think both of those things came back to haunt her.
I agree with you. And I think the other thing that I wish they would have maybe followed up a little more with, Michael, was the fact that this wasn't one stab wound and sadly this woman died. This was 15, including those defensive wounds. This was and something that shows how much anger was involved. And yes, there's no question of whether she did it or not, but she did it 15 times in this particular case. And so that intent to commit some kind of a violent offense continued for 15 consecutive times. And then the other thing that I always like to think about in these kinds of cases when I hear this kind of a defense is, what did this individual do after the event? Did she stand there and say, oh, good, I've now solved this problem? Or did she go and try to hide from the problem, create a different scenario to represent why it happened, or that she was victimized? And so this behavior surrounding what happened before, during, and after is so critical in these kinds of cases. And I wish they would have explored it a little further, but it didn't matter. They got their conviction.
Yeah, and I think the defense sort of suffered by not calling their own expert, if in fact they could have found one. They may have found one who said, look, we can't testify the way you want us to, and maybe that's why they didn't have.
Harvey's defense attorney claimed that she didn't have the soundness of mind to think her way through this idea of committing a crime. Now, the prosecution chimed in saying exactly what my thoughts have been. She certainly had the presence of mind to keep stabbing that victim. And think that out for a second. Just do that for 15 seconds each time she would have made those stabbing moves. She made calculated decisions, like ending the 911 call that the victim was making, and also coming up with this concoction story to minimize her involvement. But now she's guilty of premeditated first-degree murder. And we're going to see how angry the judge really is about this case and whether he buys the mental aspects of the case when she's sentenced. But again, let's watch this quick story by WJHL Local News.
A woman on trial for stabbing and killing a former East Tennessee State University professor has been found guilty of murder. Thanks for joining us tonight at 6. I'm Sarah Diamond.
And I'm Casey Marler. Annette Harvey faced charges of first-degree murder after that stabbing of ETSU professor Robin Leonard. The trial began last Tuesday with opening statements from Harvey's attorney that she and Leonard were friends.
Yeah, Sarah, it took about 3 hours for the jury to bring back that guilty verdict for Annette Harvey. 2 counts of first-degree murder and especially aggravated burglary. Tears were shed by friends and family members of Robin Leonard today. They took time outside of the courtroom to hug and thank attorneys on the case after the verdict was read. The last 3 years have been hard, family members said, but coming to court for the case is a testament to the strength Robin had and her fight to live.
She just kept going and pushing through. She always took care of us when we were little. It was like we had to stand up for her no matter what.
Now, a lot of today's closing arguments came down to that mental health aspect of the case and arguing whether or not there was that intent in Harvey to kill. The defense argued Harvey was not in the soundness of mind to commission a crime, while the state said evidence shows Harvey was making very calculated decisions.
Now, as we get ready for the next story, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so that you're getting notified on things like choir practice. It comes out on the first Monday of every single month.
Hey everybody, look who I'm hanging out with. And listen, I'm not attending choir practice, but I just wanted to tell you that you need to be watching Profiling Evil YouTube. Don't miss it. I'm telling you, there's something there for you every single time. I never miss. You shouldn't either.
Well, now let's talk about the complex case of Donna Adelson and the conspiracy to commit murder charges she's facing. Now, you might remember her dentist's son, Charlie Adelson, and his court case just a few months ago, where he was, in my opinion, hammered by the court and sent away to prison for life for murdering his former brother-in-law. Everybody's wondering if Adelson's daughter, who happens to be the ex-wife of the victim in this case, will be next. Who really would have benefited from the murder of this man? And frankly, does it make sense charging Donna Adelson? And will there be more? Watch.
In Florida, Donna Adelson was back in court today for a case management hearing. Adelson is accused of conspiring with her son, Charlie, in an alleged plot to arrange the murder of her former son-in-law. Now, the victim was Dan Markell, a beloved Florida State University law professor who found himself in a bitter custody battle with his ex-wife, Wendy Adelson, who is Donna's daughter and Charlie's sister. All right, still with us to discuss, retired police commander and host of Profiling Evil, Mike King, and former senior homicide prosecutor, Bernardo Villalona. And Mike, I'm going to start with you in this one. You heard at the hearing today, there was discussion of a possible plea deal. The fact that the state has not offered one, they're not expecting to offer one, but at the end of the day, you got to say, it's sort of the specter of a plea deal hangs over this entire thing from the very beginning. And one can question whether a plea deal could involve Donna maybe turning on someone, let's say Wendy, or even the prospect of Charlie getting involved somehow, trying to help mom out, maybe throwing Wendy under the bus. I don't know. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's early in the game to be seeing a plea negotiation, so that part doesn't necessarily bother me. I think the things that are interesting in this case, from my perspective, are that law enforcement gave that bump along the way, knowing that there was something more to this case. So as they start to show their cards, I think we're going to see why maybe there hasn't been a plea negotiation and why they're so convinced that she was really a conspirator in this entire thing. It's difficult to think that there are not more people involved with what we're seeing thus far, and that maybe they're systematically going through them, but that's just purely a guess on my part.
Yeah, and I got to wonder, Mike King, if the big fish here, clearly, I mean, I think Donna was sort of at the top, but the main beneficiary, it can be argued, was Wendy Adelson. And we know there's some suspect behavior. You don't have her on tape, or you don't have her on phone calls as much, but she certainly was connecting with her mom about this. She drives by the scene on the day of the murder. She also was the one that asked Dan where he would be the week of the murder. So there's certainly some evidence there that she was involved in the conspiracy. Is she the big fish? Is she the one they're going after?
Boy, I don't know, and I loved your analogy of the domino, because we really are waiting to see if there are other things that are going to tip the scales here. But I mean, clearly to me, Charlie was the big fish, and from there we're seeing now if it's going to filter back. Was mom the mastermind and drove this for everyone? Was Wendy involved? Boy, I think this is going to be interesting to see if they bring some evidence up that suggests that. So far, she's been pretty successful in keeping herself distant from the affairs of her mom and her brother. But how do you distance yourself that far from your mother and your brother?
Yeah, and
when they're dealing with your husband that was killed.
I'll tell you how. When you talk to the police, you throw them under the bus, because that's exactly what she did in that police interview. She was basically saying, my mom, they were really upset about all this. And one can argue it was really Donna who was the real winner here in the death of Dan Markell, because she was the one that wanted the kids. She was the one that wanted the kids nearby and raised a certain way, very differently from what Dan wanted at the end of the day.
Well, don't forget to subscribe for more updates from Profiling Evil, folks. Ring the bell so that you get notified. Now, I'm going to continue to dig into the darkest corners of the human psyche and share my thoughts along the way. Remember that you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and here on YouTube. And do not miss Fundamentalist Friday each Friday evening, as we explore the FLDS community and the experiences I had as an investigator in that polygamous town. It's situated down on the Utah-Arizona border, out in the middle of nowhere. Now this week, we're talking about the mysteries surrounding the baby cemetery. Why are more than 250 children buried beneath the red clay soil out there? Hey, I hope you've signed up for our digital newsletter, The BOLO. It stands for Be on the Lookout. And the only way you're going to get the BOLO, it only comes out 4 times a year, but the only way you're going to get it is if you've signed up at profilingevil.com. So keep the website in your favorites so you can stay up to date on all the things we're doing. Hey, thanks so much for your support of Profiling Evil, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.